Why some become geniuses and others stay ordinary. The Laws of Success. Published by Audiobooks Hub. Introduction. Every era has its celebrated geniuses, people whose names echo through history like bells. Leonardo da Vinci, Marie Curie, Nikola Tesla, Steve Jobs. Their work transcends time, reshaping our understanding of what is possible. Yet for every person who becomes a household name, there are millions who live and die without leaving a mark beyond their immediate circle. This is one of the most fascinating puzzles of human life. Why do some individuals rise so far above the ordinary while others remain comfortably within it? Is genius an accident of birth, a genetic lottery, a matter of raw intelligence, or something far more subtle? If you are holding this book, there is a good chance you've wondered about this question yourself. Maybe you felt a restless urge to achieve more, to stretch beyond your current limits, or to finally uncover what you're capable of. Maybe you've looked at someone brilliant and thought, what do they have that I don't? This book is my answer to those questions. A deep exploration of the laws of success that separate those who achieve extraordinary outcomes from those who remain merely average. The truth is both liberating and challenging. On the one hand, there is no single, mystical gene of genius hidden somewhere in a strand of DNA. Most of the people we now call geniuses were not born with halos over their heads. They were born as ordinary children, curious, sometimes awkward, often misunderstood, who eventually discovered how to cultivate and apply a specific set of principles. On the other hand, these principles are not easy shortcuts or quick hacks. They demand discipline, courage, and the willingness to stand apart from the crowd. That's why so few people use them, even though they're available to everyone. I first became obsessed with this topic after noticing a strange pattern in my own life. I would meet two people with the same level of intelligence, the same access to opportunities, sometimes even the same educational background, yet their lives would unfold completely differently. One would build a business, invent a product, or write a book that transformed their field, while the other would drift, dabble, and end up frustrated. This discrepancy haunted me. I started reading biographies, psychological studies, and obscure papers on creativity and achievement. Over time, I realized that behind the dazzling individuality of each genius was a set of repeatable laws. Different geniuses used them in different ways, but the underlying patterns were there. This book is about those patterns. It's about the hidden mechanics of becoming exceptional. Each chapter will take you deeper into one of these laws, not as dry theory but as living, breathing practices you can apply to your own life. We will explore how some people cultivate relentless curiosity while others settle for passive consumption. We will see how true mastery grows not from occasional bursts of effort but from deliberate, sustained practice. We'll examine why risk-taking, resilience, and vision matter more than raw IQ, and how internal beliefs quietly shape external results. But before we go any further, I need to dispel a myth. Genius is not a category of people. It is a state of being, a level of functioning that anyone can reach if they align with the right principles. Of course, not everyone will become the next Einstein or Picasso, just as not everyone who trains hard becomes an Olympic athlete. But anyone can achieve far more than they currently believe possible. The difference between mediocrity and extraordinary accomplishment is not as vast as it seems when you stand on the starting line. It begins with a shift in mindset, followed by consistent action. In a world addicted to instant gratification, this may sound like bad news. We are conditioned to expect overnight success, to crave viral fame, to believe that one brilliant idea or one lucky break will change everything. But the lives of geniuses tell a different story. Almost all of them endured long stretches of obscurity, rejection, and doubt. They were not immune to failure. They embraced it as part of the process. They understood something that most people resist. The laws of success are not glamorous. They are quiet, often invisible, and sometimes even dull. But they work, and over time they compound into greatness. Another misconception is that genius requires a tortured soul. The popular image of the mad genius can be romantic, but it is not universally true. Many extraordinary people live balanced, fulfilling lives. What unites them is not misery but intensity. a focused energy directed toward a purpose larger than themselves. This intensity can be learned and cultivated. In fact, one of the secrets you'll discover in this book is that sustainable genius depends on psychological resilience, not on burnout or self-destruction. So, who is this book for? It is for anyone who refuses to accept the idea that their potential is fixed. It is for people who want to break free from the gravity of the ordinary and create something remarkable, whether that is an artwork, a business, a scientific breakthrough, or a better version of themselves. You don't have to want global fame or historical significance. Becoming a genius, in this context, simply means reaching your highest level of contribution, whatever that may be. As you read, I encourage you to treat each chapter as a mirror. Don't just nod along with the ideas. Use them to examine your own life. Where are you following the crowd instead of forging your own path? Where are you playing small because it feels safe? Where have you allowed habits, fears, or limiting beliefs to keep you from practicing at the level of mastery? This book won't hand you a magic formula, but it will give you a map. The territory is yours to explore. There is one more thing you should know. At the heart of all these laws, hidden beneath the layers of practice, discipline, and mindset, there lies a final principle. A principle so simple yet so powerful that it binds all the others together. I call it the axis of genius. And it's the reason some people can combine talent, timing, and opportunity into a force that changes the world. Throughout the chapters ahead, I will hint at this principle, but I will not fully reveal it until the end. When you reach the conclusion of this book, you'll see how everything fits together and why this axis matters more than any single technique. For now, all I ask is that you read with an open mind. Forget what you've been told about fixed intelligence or luck or waiting for your big break. Forget the myths about overnight success or tortured souls. Instead, step into the mindset of a scientist and a student. Test the ideas, experiment with the practices, and see how they reshape your daily life. Genius is not a distant star. It is a potential within you, waiting for the right conditions to ignite. Chapter 1. If the introduction opened the door, this is where we step through it. The first and most powerful law that separates those who rise from those who drift is not talent, intelligence, or even opportunity. It is the depth and direction of attention. Almost every genius, when you strip away the mythology, shares one trait: an obsessive capacity to focus on a problem or craft for long stretches of time without needing the constant novelty and distraction that most people crave. This isn't simply working hard in the common sense. It's a way of relating to the world, a way of seeing that turns ordinary experiences into raw material for extraordinary insights. Think about it. Most people's minds behave like restless birds, hopping from branch to branch. They check their phones, jump between tasks, glance at the clock, drift into daydreams. Their mental energy is diffused across dozens of competing interests. But the minds of extraordinary achievers are more like a hawk circling above a field. They hold one thing in view, patiently and persistently, until they understand it, master it, or solve it. This ability is not glamorous in the moment. It often feels slow and even boring. But it creates a kind of compounding effect. Every hour of deep attention builds upon the previous one, gradually constructing a foundation of mastery. This is why so many of history's breakthroughs look sudden from the outside but are actually the result of long gestation. Newton's apple, Archimedes' bath, Mozart's symphonies, these moments of inspiration were built on years of sustained immersion. The aha moment is merely the tip of an iceberg. Beneath it lies an ocean of focus. Without that focus, ideas slide off the mind like water off glass. With it, ideas sink in, combine, and reconfigure until something new emerges. The good news is that focus, like any skill, can be developed. It's not a gift bestowed at birth. It's a muscle you can train. Most people underestimate how much their environment, habits, and mental diet shape their capacity for deep work. The average person's day is engineered to erode attention, notifications, multitasking, constant consumption of shallow information. Geniuses, whether by instinct or deliberate choice, reverse this pattern. They create pockets of uninterrupted time. They curate their inputs carefully. They give themselves permission to become absorbed. This is not to say they never get distracted or bored. They do. But they've learned how to stay with the discomfort of concentration long enough for it to transform into flow. The first minutes of focus often feel like friction. The mind resists. But if you stay with it, something shifts. Time dissolves. The work begins to pull you in rather than push you away. Hours pass unnoticed. In that state, you not only produce more, you produce differently. Connections form that would never appear at the surface level of attention. Another difference is what geniuses choose to focus on. Attention by itself is neutral. It can be wasted on trivial pursuits or invested in meaningful ones. Many people are capable of intense concentration when scrolling social media or playing a game. But the extraordinary channel that same energy into domains that matter. They pick problems that stretch them, crafts that challenge them, goals that align with a deeper purpose. They are not merely disciplined. They are strategically disciplined. They don't just say no to distractions. They say yes to a mission. This alignment between focus and purpose is powerful. It creates a self-reinforcing loop. The more meaningful the task, the easier it becomes to sustain attention, and the more attention you sustain, the more meaning you extract from the task. Over time, this loop turns into mastery. Mastery, in turn, unlocks creativity. Creativity then feeds back into meaning. This is one of the quiet laws of success most people overlook. They try to motivate themselves through willpower alone, forcing themselves to grind at something they don't truly care about. That's like trying to sail against the wind. The better approach is to find the wind of genuine curiosity and raise your sail. Curiosity, in fact, is the spark that ignites focus. Every genius you've ever heard of was curious to the point of obsession. Einstein once said he had no special talent, only passionate curiosity. That curiosity made long hours of study feel like play rather than punishment. It turned work into exploration. When you're genuinely curious, you don't have to force yourself to pay attention. Your mind naturally returns to the problem like a tongue to a missing tooth. You wake up thinking about it. You notice patterns others overlook. You begin to see connections across domains. That's how breakthroughs happen. Not from a single bolt of lightning, but from countless small observations woven together by attention. Yet even curiosity can fade without structure. One common mistake is to assume that being passionate means you'll automatically stay focused. In reality, even the most passionate genius sets boundaries, rituals, and goals to protect their attention. They understand that the world is full of hooks designed to capture their minds. They build habits to keep those hooks at bay. This might look like setting a regular schedule, eliminating unnecessary commitments, or creating a dedicated space for deep work. It might mean using notebooks instead of screens, taking long walks to think, or deliberately seeking solitude. These habits are not restrictions, they are enablers. They free the mind to dive deeper. Of course, there's a social cost to this level of focus. When you direct your energy so intensely, you inevitably say no to many things others expect you to say yes to. Invitations, trends, conversations, even friendships may shift. That's part of the price of extraordinary achievement, but it's also one of its rewards. By reclaiming your attention, you reclaim your life. You stop living reactively and start living deliberately. You begin to experience a sense of agency, of moving toward something rather than being moved by everything. This chapter may sound like a call for monastic isolation, but it isn't. Focus doesn't require withdrawing from the world. It requires engaging with it more selectively. Some of the most inventive people are also deeply social, but they are intentional about when and how they interact. They alternate between immersion and collaboration, solitude and exchange. This rhythm allows ideas to incubate privately and then be tested publicly. It's another form of attention not just to work but to one's own mental state. If you take only one thing from this chapter, let it be this: your attention is your most valuable asset. Where you direct it shapes what you become. Every hour spent in deep focus is an investment in future insight. Every hour lost to distraction is an opportunity slipping away. This is not meant to make you anxious but to wake you up. The playing field of genius is not reserved for a lucky few. It's open to anyone willing to harness their attention and channel it toward meaningful work. Over the coming chapters, we'll explore other laws, practice, resilience, vision, and more. But all of them depend on this first one. Without focus, even the best strategies dissolve into noise. With it, even ordinary efforts compound into extraordinary results. It is the foundation on which every other principle rests. So as you turn the page, ask yourself, what in your life is worthy of your deepest attention, and what is merely scattering it? The answer to that question may be the first step on your own path to genius. Chapter 2. If focus is the foundation, practice is the scaffolding that rises on top of it. Many people assume that genius is synonymous with effortless brilliance, that a painter simply picks up a brush and creates a masterpiece, or a scientist casually thinks their way to a breakthrough. But if you look closely at the lives of those we call geniuses, you'll find not ease but repetition. Hours upon hours of work, sometimes dull and tedious, sometimes exhilarating, but always deliberate. This is the second great law of success, the willingness to engage in purposeful, sustained practice long after the initial excitement fades. What separates extraordinary performers from ordinary ones is not simply the number of hours they put in but how they use those hours. Most people practice until they're good enough to be comfortable, then level off. Geniuses practice past that point. They seek discomfort. They deliberately expose themselves to challenges just beyond their current ability, stretching their skills like muscles under tension. This is known in psychology as deliberate practice, and it's one of the few concepts backed by decades of research on expertise. It's not glamorous, but it's transformative. Consider the story of a young musician. Two students start with the same instrument at the same time. For the first year or two, their progress looks similar. But one keeps practicing scales, playing easy songs, staying within a comfort zone. The other spends the same amount of time but focuses on the hardest passages, records themselves, studies mistakes, and pushes to correct them. By the fifth year, they're in different worlds. One is competent, the other is extraordinary. The gap looks like talent, but it's really the compounding effect of focused effort. This pattern repeats across domains. Great writers revise their drafts dozens of times. Great scientists run experiment after experiment, most of which fail. Great athletes train off-season when no one is watching. Behind the curtain of genius is a mountain of practice invisible to outsiders. This is why luck alone cannot explain sustained excellence. You may stumble into a lucky break once, but you cannot stumble into mastery. The challenge, of course, is that deliberate practice is uncomfortable. It requires facing your weaknesses rather than polishing your strengths. It means enduring boredom, frustration, and the slow grind of incremental improvement. It demands patience in a culture addicted to instant results. Most people avoid this pain by telling themselves they lack talent or by distracting themselves with easier tasks. Geniuses lean into it. They see each mistake as information, each plateau as a signal to adjust their approach. They build a relationship with practice that is almost spiritual, a daily ritual of refinement. Yet practice is not only about skill, it's also about identity. When you show up for your craft day after day, you're telling yourself who you are. A dancer who trains every morning isn't just getting better at movement, they're becoming the kind of person who moves. A thinker who writes every day isn't just filling pages, they're becoming a writer. This identity feedback loop strengthens commitment. Even when progress feels invisible, the act of practicing reinforces your sense of purpose. Another important element is feedback. Practice without feedback is like sailing without a compass. You move but don't know where you're going. Geniuses actively seek input, not just from mentors but from reality itself. They test their ideas, measure their results, and adjust. This feedback can be harsh, even humiliating. It often reveals that what you thought you understood you don't. But that's precisely why it's valuable. It accelerates learning. It helps you escape the illusion of competence. There's also a rhythm to effective practice. The best performers don't grind mindlessly for endless hours. They work in focused bursts, then rest. They understand that recovery is part of improvement. Muscles grow during rest, so do neural connections. This balance between intense effort and deliberate pause keeps them from burning out. It also keeps practice from becoming mechanical. Each session feels like a conscious engagement rather than a chore. It's worth noting that the world rarely celebrates this stage of genius. We see the finished product, a symphony, a discovery, a company, but not the years of repetition behind it. This can make your own practice feel lonely. You might wonder if you're wasting time while others seem to be racing ahead. But those public bursts of brilliance are almost always the culmination of hidden labor. Trust the process. The results may not be immediate, but they are inevitable if you persist. Another subtlety is that deliberate practice isn't confined to a single domain. Geniuses often cross-train their minds. A mathematician might study music. A designer might learn psychology. These off-axis practices feed creativity in surprising ways. They build mental flexibility and help you see patterns others miss. They also keep practice fresh. Variety, when used intentionally, prevents stagnation without diluting focus. This leads to one of the quiet advantages of sustained practice: the compound effect of time. Skill acquisition is not linear. For a long while, progress feels painfully slow. Then something clicks. Your brain reorganizes. Suddenly what was hard becomes easy, freeing up bandwidth for more complex challenges. These inflection points are only reachable by those who keep going when others quit. It's like digging for water. Most people stop when the ground is dry. Geniuses keep digging until they hit a spring. There's also a psychological shift that happens after years of deliberate practice. You stop being a beginner. You start thinking like a practitioner. Problems that once intimidated you become playgrounds. Mistakes that once felt like failures become data. The craft becomes an extension of your mind. This is where true creativity begins, not at the start but at the far end of discipline. As the jazz legend Charlie Parker said, "First you learn the instrument, then you forget all that and just play." Freedom emerges from structure. For you reading this, the question isn't whether you have what it takes. The question is whether you're willing to step into the arena of practice and stay there. Are you willing to design your days around growth rather than comfort? Are you willing to measure yourself not by immediate results but by your commitment to refinement? Are you willing to become a student again and again, even when you already feel competent? If the answer is yes, you're already on the path. Because genius isn't a leap, it's a climb. There is one more subtlety worth mentioning. Practice is not about self-punishment. It's about love. The people who sustain it longest are those who feel a deep affection for the process itself. They don't just endure the grind, they find meaning in it. They notice the small victories, the tiny improvements, the quiet satisfaction of progress. This emotional connection transforms practice from a duty into a privilege. It becomes not something you have to do, but something you get to do. That shift makes all the difference. As you finish this chapter, consider your own craft, whatever it may be. Where have you plateaued because you're practicing only what's easy? Where could you push yourself just a little further, even if it's uncomfortable? Where could you seek honest feedback? Where could you design a ritual that makes practice inevitable? These are not rhetorical questions. They are invitations to step into the same cycle that every genius has walked. The path is not glamorous, but it is open. And each day you walk it, you're moving closer to mastery, even if no one sees it yet. Chapter 3. Focus gives you direction, and deliberate practice builds your skills. But even with both, there is another barrier that stops most people from crossing into exceptional territory: resilience. No matter how gifted, how disciplined, or how driven, you will fail. You will be ignored, rejected, misunderstood, and sometimes ridiculed. Projects will collapse, opportunities will vanish, and people will doubt you, including yourself. The third great law of success is not to avoid adversity but to learn how to recover from it, to keep moving when others quit. Without resilience, talent and effort eventually crumble under the weight of reality. The lives of extraordinary achievers are littered with setbacks. Thomas Edison performed thousands of unsuccessful experiments before arriving at a working light bulb. J.K. Rowling was rejected by a dozen publishers before anyone agreed to print her first book. Steve Jobs was fired from the company he co-founded. These are the stories we know, but there are countless others we don't. Behind every breakthrough is a graveyard of failed attempts. Genius, it turns out, is not a straight line but a spiral. Forward, backward, sideways, looping, iterating, falling and rising again. Most people underestimate how demoralizing this can be. It's one thing to work hard when progress is visible. It's another to keep going when progress disappears, when nothing seems to work, and when your peers have moved on to safer paths. This is the moment where resilience separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. Not because resilient people enjoy suffering, but because they've learned to interpret setbacks differently. Where most see a verdict, "I'm not good enough," they see feedback. Where most see a dead end, they see a detour. They don't pretend failure doesn't hurt, they just don't let it define them. This capacity is not innate. It can be cultivated. Psychologists call it grit, mental toughness, or psychological resilience. But whatever the label, it boils down to how you respond under pressure. One part is emotional regulation, learning to calm your nervous system so disappointment doesn't spiral into despair. Another part is cognitive reframing, training your mind to see failure as information, not as identity. A third part is social support, surrounding yourself with people who understand your mission and can remind you of it when you forget. An interesting paradox emerges here. People often assume that geniuses are more fragile because they care more deeply about their work. In fact, the opposite is usually true. Because they're anchored to a purpose larger than ego, they're less likely to interpret every setback as a personal attack. They may feel pain intensely, but they process it and return to the work. They understand that resilience is not stoic numbness. It's flexibility. It's the ability to bend without breaking, to absorb a blow and then reorient. One of the best ways to build this capacity is to expose yourself to small, controlled doses of difficulty, what researchers call stress inoculation. Just as the body becomes stronger after lifting weights, the psyche becomes stronger after facing manageable challenges. Each time you navigate one successfully, you expand your tolerance. You also build evidence for yourself, "I can handle this." Over time, these experiences accumulate into a quiet confidence that you can weather storms larger than the ones you've already faced. Another overlooked aspect of resilience is recovery. Geniuses are not machines. They don't simply grind through adversity without pause. They oscillate between intense effort and deliberate rest. They know when to step back, when to sleep, when to go for a walk, when to reconnect with loved ones. This isn't weakness, it's strategy. It allows their nervous systems to reset so they can re-engage with full strength. Without this rhythm, resilience decays into burnout. There's also a storytelling component. How you narrate your own difficulties shapes how you experience them. Two people can go through the same setback and draw completely different conclusions. One might say, "This proves I'm a failure." The other might say, "This is the training I need for what's coming next." The event is the same, the meaning is different. Geniuses are skilled at writing empowering narratives about their struggles. They see themselves not as victims of fate, but as protagonists in an unfolding story. This perspective transforms obstacles into plot points rather than endpoints. It's worth mentioning that resilience is not just about endurance, but also about adaptation. Sometimes the smartest move is not to push harder, but to change approach. When a method fails repeatedly, resilient people don't interpret it as proof that the goal is impossible. They use it as a signal to innovate. This is why they often appear both stubborn and flexible at the same time. They are stubborn about the mission but flexible about the methods. They don't confuse persistence with rigidity. For you reading this, the question is not whether you'll face setbacks but how you'll respond when you do. Will you take them as evidence that you're not cut out for the path you've chosen, or will you treat them as part of the apprenticeship? Will you isolate yourself or reach out for support? Will you burn out or build recovery into your process? Resilience doesn't mean never feeling doubt or despair. It means feeling them fully and still taking the next step. A helpful exercise is to look back on your own life and recall times you've overcome something difficult. Perhaps you learned a skill, endured a loss, or rebuilt after a disappointment. Those moments are proof of your existing resilience. They're also templates. Ask yourself, what did I do then that helped me recover? Who supported me? How did I frame the experience? What could I carry forward into the challenges I face now? By consciously drawing on your own history, you strengthen your ability to handle the future. Resilience also has a hidden benefit. It builds humility. When you've been knocked down and gotten up again, you lose the illusion of invincibility. This makes you more open to learning, more compassionate toward others, and less attached to a single image of success. Ironically, this humility often accelerates growth. It frees you from the need to appear perfect and allows you to take bolder risks. You stop playing not to lose and start playing to learn. Every genius story contains a moment where resilience was the deciding factor. The experiments failed, the rejections piled up, the critics sneered, and yet the person kept going. That's not just a footnote, it's the core of the narrative. Without resilience, the other laws of success collapse. Focus becomes fixation. Practice becomes drudgery. Vision becomes fantasy. Resilience is what ties them to reality. It's the bridge between the idea of greatness and the lived experience of pursuing it. As you move forward, remember that resilience is not a trait you either have or don't. It's a practice just like focus and skill. Every time you return to your craft after a setback, you're strengthening it. Every time you choose recovery over burnout, you're strengthening it. Every time you reframe a failure as feedback, you're strengthening it. Over time, these small acts add up to a person who can weather storms without losing sight of the horizon. The world will test you. That's not a threat but a promise. If you aspire to do something meaningful, obstacles will arise. But those obstacles are not the end of your story. They are the training ground for your character. And the more resilient you become, the more daring you can be. Genius is not built in the absence of adversity but in the presence of it. The question is not, will you fall, but how will you rise? The answer, repeated often enough, becomes your strength. Chapter 4. Focus gives you a clear direction, practice builds your skill, resilience keeps you standing, but even with all of these, there is still another dimension to extraordinary achievement. It is vision. The ability to see a reality that does not yet exist and to orient your life around bringing it into being. If focus is about depth, vision is about distance. It is the capacity to hold a picture of something larger and more meaningful than your current circumstances, a picture vivid enough to guide your decisions and inspire your persistence when the work becomes hard. Most people drift through life reacting to immediate demands. They wake up, handle the tasks of the day, and go to bed, only to repeat the same cycle tomorrow. Their goals are often short-term: a promotion, a purchase, a vacation. There is nothing wrong with this, but it rarely leads to extraordinary impact. Geniuses, on the other hand, live with a kind of double vision. They attend to the present with intensity, but they're also oriented toward a horizon that stretches far beyond what's visible now. They're building something they may not fully see completed in their lifetime. They're guided by a mental image, a hypothesis, a dream. Think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I have a dream" speech, or Marie Curie's unwavering pursuit of unseen particles, or Elon Musk's insistence on making humanity a multiplanetary species. These visions were not guaranteed. They were not realistic in the conventional sense. They were aspirational and, at times, ridiculed. Yet they provided a source of energy that short-term goals could not. They became a North Star around which effort could orbit. Without a vision, persistence fades into drudgery. With a vision, persistence becomes devotion. Vision also shapes the way you interpret obstacles. If your goal is simply to complete a task, every setback feels like a threat. But if your goal is to build something larger, setbacks become small bumps on a long road. This perspective keeps your emotional energy steady. It also attracts allies. People are drawn to those who can articulate a compelling future. Vision is contagious. It inspires cooperation, investment, and trust. Many so-called geniuses are actually visionaries who enrolled others in their dream and thus multiplied their own impact. Yet vision is not fantasy. It's not wishful thinking or vague daydreaming. It's disciplined imagination. It involves both creativity and realism, the creativity to conceive something new, and the realism to chart a path toward it. This is where the previous laws of success feed into it. Focus helps you clarify what matters. Practice gives you the skills to execute. Resilience allows you to endure the long arc. Vision integrates them into a coherent whole. The tricky part is that vision can't be borrowed. You can be inspired by someone else's dream, but unless it resonates with your own deepest values, it won't sustain you. This is why so many people burn out chasing fashionable goals. They're pursuing what looks impressive rather than what feels meaningful. A true vision feels alive. It excites you and frightens you at the same time. It's big enough to stretch you but specific enough to guide you. You don't have to know every step of the way. You just have to know the direction and the next move. Developing such a vision starts with paying attention to what moves you. What problems in the world bother you so much you can't stop thinking about them? What activities make you lose track of time? What outcomes would still feel worth it even if no one applauded? These are clues. Another clue is envy. Not the shallow envy of possessions, but the deeper envy of someone's life path. If you feel a pang when you see someone doing a particular kind of work, it may be because part of you longs for that direction too. Once you have a sense of your vision, the next step is to articulate it. Write it down. Sketch it. Speak it aloud. The act of naming it begins to give it form. It also forces you to clarify it. A vision that stays in your head remains blurry. A vision you express becomes more concrete. Over time, you can refine it, expand it, and adapt it as you grow. Many geniuses did not start with a perfect blueprint. They started with a hunch and refined it through action. Action is key. Vision without movement is hallucination. The point of having a picture of the future is not to escape the present, but to shape it. Start where you are with what you have. Take small steps that align with your larger picture. Each step will teach you something, and your vision will evolve. Sometimes it will get bigger, sometimes it will get narrower. That's normal. Vision is not static. It's a living relationship between you and possibility. There is a danger, however, in becoming so attached to your vision that you ignore reality. Some people confuse stubbornness with conviction. They cling to an idea even when evidence shows it isn't working. Geniuses avoid this trap by distinguishing between their purpose and their methods. They stay loyal to the underlying aim but flexible about how to reach it. If one approach fails, they try another. Their vision provides direction, not rigidity. This adaptability allows them to keep moving toward the horizon even when the terrain changes. Vision also requires courage. To see what others don't see is to risk being misunderstood. People may call you unrealistic, naive, or arrogant. They may project their own fears onto you. This social friction can be painful, but it's also a signal you're stepping outside the ordinary. The key is to stay grounded, to test your ideas, seek feedback, and remain humble even as you hold your dream. Courage does not mean certainty. It means moving forward despite uncertainty. One of the quiet benefits of having a vision is that it gives meaning to sacrifice. When you're working long hours, saying no to distractions, or enduring criticism, it's easier to persist if you know why. Without a why, effort feels like punishment. With a why, effort feels like investment. This meaning is what sustains geniuses through the long, invisible stretches of work that precede public recognition. As you reflect on your own path, ask yourself, what picture of the future pulls me forward? What kind of person am I becoming as I work toward it? What would I be willing to endure to make it real? You don't need to have all the answers. Even a rough sketch of a vision is enough to start. Over time, it will sharpen. The important thing is to stop drifting and start steering. Life will always be uncertain, but a vision gives you a compass. In the end, vision is not about grandiosity. You don't have to want to change the entire world. Your vision might be to raise a family, to create a local business, to develop a technology, to write a book, to mentor others. What matters is not its scale but its authenticity. When you're living from a real vision, your energy changes. Your work deepens. People notice. Opportunities align. You begin to step into the realm where ordinary effort produces extraordinary results. Focus, practice, resilience, and vision, each law builds on the previous ones. Together, they create a momentum that feels unstoppable. You may still face setbacks, but you'll also feel a sense of purpose that makes those setbacks tolerable. You'll find yourself doing things you once thought impossible. This is the quiet path to genius. Not a flash of brilliance, but a sustained alignment between what you see, what you do, and who you are becoming. Chapter 5. If vision is the compass, discipline is the engine. Without discipline, even the brightest vision remains a fantasy. Discipline is the ability to do what you said you would do long after the mood in which you said it has faded. It's the invisible force that separates intention from accomplishment, the habit of following through on small commitments so that bigger commitments become possible. When we look at people who achieve extraordinary results, we tend to imagine them as naturally gifted or endlessly motivated. But motivation is fickle. It surges when you're inspired and vanishes when you're tired. Discipline, on the other hand, is stable. It's not about feeling like working, it's about working whether you feel like it or not. This is why disciplined people often look like they have more willpower than everyone else. In reality, they've built routines and structures that reduce the need for willpower. They don't rely on fleeting bursts of inspiration, they rely on systems. Consider the daily habits of some of history's great minds. Beethoven rose early every morning, prepared his coffee with obsessive precision, and composed until midday. Haruki Murakami runs miles every day while writing his novels, following a strict schedule. Athletes, scientists, and artists all know that breakthroughs emerge from consistent effort, not occasional sprints. Discipline creates the conditions for genius to show itself. It's like tending a garden. The regular watering, weeding, and pruning don't look dramatic, but they make the bloom inevitable. Discipline also protects you from distraction. We live in an age where your attention is constantly under siege. Notifications, emails, endless scrolling. These are not just annoyances, they're obstacles to depth. Ordinary lives are often ordinary not because of lack of talent but because of fractured focus. Disciplined people draw boundaries. They decide when to check their phone, how to structure their day, and which activities deserve their time. This self-management creates space for deep work, the kind of work where real breakthroughs happen. One of the myths about discipline is that it's about harsh self-denial. People imagine a life of grim austerity, joylessly grinding through tasks. But true discipline is not punishment, it's alignment. It's aligning your daily behavior with your larger goals. When you know what you're working toward, discipline feels less like restriction and more like freedom. You're free from the chaos of indecision, free from the guilt of procrastination, free from the regret of wasted potential. It's the freedom to be in control of yourself. Still, building discipline takes effort, especially at the beginning. The brain resists change. It prefers comfort and familiarity. This is why the first days of a new habit feel so hard. But something remarkable happens once a habit is established. The effort shifts from conscious struggle to automatic routine. You don't have to decide each morning whether to brush your teeth, you just do it. The same can become true for writing, exercising, studying, or practicing your craft. The key is to start small. Don't try to overhaul your life overnight. Pick one behavior that moves you closer to your vision and commit to it daily. As you succeed, your confidence grows. This momentum fuels the next habit. Another secret of disciplined people is that they design their environment to support their goals. They remove temptations rather than constantly resisting them. They set up cues that make the desired behavior easy and frictionless. For example, if you want to write every morning, leave your notebook open on the desk before you go to bed. If you want to eat healthier, don't keep junk food in the house. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Willpower is a limited resource. By shaping your surroundings, you conserve it for truly difficult moments. Self-discipline also involves self-compassion. You will slip up. You will miss days. You will break promises to yourself. The difference between disciplined people and everyone else is not that they never fail, it's that they recover quickly. They don't use a mistake as an excuse to quit. They treat it as data, adjust, and continue. This resilience in the face of imperfection is crucial. Without it, discipline becomes brittle, and brittle discipline shatters under pressure. It's worth noting that discipline is contagious. When you consistently honor your commitments, People begin to trust you. Opportunities open. Colleagues, friends, and partners take you seriously because your actions match your words. This reputation compounds over time. While others are still talking about their plans, you're quietly building. Eventually, the results speak louder than any declaration could. There's also an emotional payoff to discipline that few talk about. It builds self-respect. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your sense of agency. You prove, in a small but undeniable way, that you can be relied upon, not just by others, but by yourself. This self-respect is the foundation of confidence. It's hard to feel like a fraud when you know, in your bones, that you show up for yourself day after day. Confidence built this way is not fragile. It doesn't crumble when someone criticizes you or when you face a setback. It's earned, and because it's earned, it endures. Sometimes discipline requires sacrifice. You can't do everything. You will have to say no to appealing distractions, to social invitations, to opportunities that don't align with your deeper goals. This can feel isolating, but over time, it clarifies your path. By pruning what's non-essential, you create space for what truly matters. This is not asceticism for its own sake, it's intentional focus. The irony is that disciplined people often end up feeling more satisfied and less stressed than those who constantly chase everything. Their lives may look simpler from the outside, but inside, there's a quiet power. When you combine discipline with the previous laws, focus, practice, resilience, and vision, you begin to operate on a different level. Focus tells you where to aim. Practice improves your aim. Resilience keeps you aiming even when you miss. Vision shows you why the target matters. Discipline pulls the trigger every day, whether you're inspired or not. This daily execution is what turns potential into mastery. If you want to cultivate discipline in your own life, start by identifying one area where inconsistency is holding you back. What small daily action, if done reliably, would move you forward? Commit to it for 30 days. Track your progress. Expect discomfort. Anticipate resistance. Remind yourself of your larger vision. Each time you complete the action, no matter how small, celebrate the win. You're training your brain to associate discipline with success, not suffering. In the end, discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't produce dramatic stories. It's quiet, steady, and unassuming. But if you look closely at any genius, you will find it humming beneath the surface like a hidden engine. Talent may give you a head start. Luck may open a door. Vision may inspire you. But discipline carries you across the finish line. It's the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. Chapter 6. No matter how focused, disciplined, and resilient you are, your environment will either lift you up or drag you down. Geniuses rarely grow in a vacuum. Even the most solitary inventors, writers, or scientists are part of a web of influences, teachers, rivals, and collaborators. This invisible network can be a powerful accelerator or a hidden anchor. Understanding and shaping your environment is one of the quiet laws of success. Most people underestimate how deeply their surroundings affect their thinking and behavior. The people you spend time with influence your habits, your beliefs, even your sense of what's possible. If everyone around you treats mediocrity as normal, mediocrity starts to feel inevitable. If everyone around you values excellence, you begin to stretch toward it almost automatically. This isn't about imitation, it's about calibration. We unconsciously calibrate our standards to the group. This is why some people's lives change dramatically after moving cities, changing jobs, or finding a new circle of friends. The shift in environment shifts their expectations. History is full of clusters of brilliance. Renaissance Florence, the Vienna Circle of Philosophers, Silicon Valley in the 1970s and 80s. These weren't coincidences. They were ecosystems that combined talent, resources, competition, and support. Within those ecosystems, ideas could cross-pollinate, norms of excellence could spread, and individuals could find encouragement to take risks. Even when we celebrate a single genius, a Da Vinci, a Mozart, a Jobs, we are also seeing the echo of an environment that nurtured them. Yet environment isn't only about people. It's also about the physical and mental spaces you occupy. A cluttered desk can lead to a cluttered mind. Constant noise can erode your focus. Chaotic schedules can sap your energy. Conversely, a clean, quiet, well-lit space signals to your brain that it's time to do deep work. Small cues matter. The room where you work, the tools you use, the rituals you adopt, all of these send messages to your subconscious about what kind of work you're about to do. Genius may look spontaneous, but it often emerges from carefully cultivated conditions. One of the subtle powers of environment is feedback. In a supportive environment, your small successes are noticed and reinforced. You get useful critiques instead of ridicule. You're challenged but not crushed. This feedback loop accelerates learning. In a toxic environment, the opposite happens. Effort is ignored or mocked, risks are punished, and learning slows. Over time, even talented people begin to doubt themselves. The same person in two different environments can look like two different levels of ability. This doesn't mean you need perfect conditions before you start. Geniuses often begin in humble or even hostile settings. What matters is not perfection but intentionality. You can shape your environment in small ways. You can seek mentors. You can join communities aligned with your goals. You can declutter your space. You can limit exposure to negativity. You can find or create rituals that signal focus. Each small change compounds. The more you surround yourself with cues of excellence, the more excellence becomes your default. Another important aspect of environment is challenge. Too much comfort breeds stagnation. Too much pressure breeds burnout. The sweet spot is an environment that stretches you without breaking you, what psychologists call optimal stress. In such an environment, your skills are tested just beyond their current limits. This is where growth happens. Think of a good coach or teacher. They push you to do more than you thought you could, but they also support you as you try. Geniuses seek out these growth environments rather than staying where things are easy. The environment also influences your identity. Identity is not just who you think you are, it's who the people around you reflect back to you. If those reflections are small, your self-concept shrinks. If they're expansive, your self-concept grows. This is why many people experience transformative leaps after finding a mentor who truly believes in them. That belief acts as a mirror, showing them a version of themselves they hadn't fully seen yet. Once seen, it's hard to unsee. You begin to behave as if it were true, and eventually it becomes true. Of course, you can't always change your environment overnight. You may be surrounded by people who don't share your ambitions. You may not have access to elite circles. In these cases, you can still curate what you consume and how you spend your time. Books, podcasts, online communities, and courses can become a virtual environment of excellence. Even spending an hour a day immersed in higher standards can start to shift your mindset. Over time, this internal environment can lead to external changes as you naturally gravitate toward people and places that match your evolving standards. There's also the environment of your own mind. The thoughts you repeatedly entertain, the stories you tell yourself, the emotions you indulge, these are as real as the room you're sitting in. If your internal environment is dominated by self-doubt, cynicism, or resentment, it will sabotage your efforts no matter how good your external conditions are. Cultivating a mental environment of curiosity, gratitude, and possibility is as important as curating your physical space or social circle. Many geniuses have daily practices, meditation, journaling, walking, that help them tend their inner environment. This isn't fluff, it's maintenance. A powerful exercise is to audit your environment. Ask yourself, who are the 5 people I spend the most time with? What do my daily surroundings look and feel like? What media do I consume? How do I talk to myself? Which of these influences lift me up and which drag me down? Then, make one small change at a time. Replace an hour of doom scrolling with an hour of reading. Spend more time with someone who inspires you and less with someone who drains you. Rearrange your workspace. Over weeks and months, these micro-adjustments create a macro shift. One of the hidden benefits of improving your environment is that it strengthens all the other laws of success. A supportive environment makes focus easier, practice more consistent, resilience more sustainable, vision more vivid, and discipline less punishing. You don't have to fight yourself as much. The wind is at your back instead of in your face. This doesn't guarantee genius, but it dramatically increases the odds of your potential unfolding. In the end, shaping your environment is about respecting the power of context. We like to imagine ourselves as completely self-determined, but humans are profoundly contextual creatures. If you've struggled to make changes in your life, it may not be because you're weak-willed. It may be because you're trying to swim upstream in an environment that pushes you the other way. Change the stream, and your effort suddenly looks like strength. Geniuses know this. They're not just masters of their craft, they're architects of their conditions. Your environment is either an anchor or a sail. It can keep you tied to the dock of ordinariness, or it can catch the wind of your effort and carry you farther than you imagined. You can't always control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. Start today with what you can control. Over time, you'll look back and realize you've been moving in a very different current. One that leads not to the ordinary but to the extraordinary. Chapter 7. So far we've looked at inner qualities, focus, discipline, resilience, vision, and at external ones like environment. But there's another element that almost every extraordinary life contains: a deep sense of purpose. Purpose is not just a goal, it's the meaning behind the goal. It's the thread that ties all your actions together, the underlying why that gives shape to your choices. Without purpose, even great accomplishments can feel strangely hollow. With it, even small achievements feel significant. People who remain ordinary often confuse purpose with pleasure. They chase whatever feels good in the moment: comfort, approval, distraction, and wonder why the satisfaction fades so quickly. Pleasure is real and necessary, but it's temporary. Purpose is enduring. It makes effort worthwhile. It turns hardship into a story rather than a sentence. When you have a purpose, setbacks don't define you. They become chapters in a larger narrative. Purpose also acts as a compass in a noisy world. You're constantly bombarded with opportunities, opinions, and demands. Without a clear sense of why you're doing what you're doing, you get pulled in every direction, saying yes to things that don't matter, burning out on tasks that don't move you forward. Purpose cuts through this noise. It simplifies decisions. If something serves your deeper aim, you pursue it. If it doesn't, you let it go. This clarity is a superpower. Look at the people you think of as geniuses. Einstein's purpose was not just to solve equations. It was to understand the fabric of reality. Mother Teresa's purpose was not just to serve the poor. It was to embody compassion. Steve Jobs' purpose was not just to build gadgets. It was to make tools for the mind that amplify human creativity. Their work sprang from something bigger than themselves. This sense of being part of a larger story gave them energy when others quit. Purpose also fuels persistence. It's easier to endure boredom, frustration, or criticism when you're convinced your work matters. Soldiers endure hardship because they believe in a cause. Parents make sacrifices because they love their children. Scientists spend decades on obscure problems because they're convinced the answer will help humanity. Purpose transforms drudgery into devotion. It doesn't eliminate struggle, but it gives struggle meaning. Finding your purpose is not about waiting for a lightning bolt. It's about paying attention. What injustices make you angry? What possibilities make you excited? What kind of work would you do even if no one noticed? These are clues. Another clue is admiration. Whose lives or achievements do you deeply respect? Not superficially, but at the core? Often, admiration is recognition. You see in others something you're meant to cultivate in yourself. At first, your purpose may feel vague, like a foggy landscape. That's fine. You don't have to see every detail. You only need a direction. Purpose is something you grow into by acting, not something you perfectly define before you begin. Take a step toward what feels meaningful. Pay attention to how it feels. Adjust. Over time, the fog clears. This is how most so-called geniuses actually find their calling, not by waiting for clarity, but by moving toward curiosity and caring. Purpose also evolves. What drives you at May 20th not drive you at 40. That's normal. Your life experiences deepen your understanding of what matters. The key is to keep listening, to keep refining. Don't cling to an old story just because it once inspired you. Stay willing to rewrite your narrative as you grow. Geniuses aren't married to a single rigid identity, they're committed to a living sense of mission that adapts without losing its core. It's worth noticing how purpose affects the people around you. When you live with a sense of mission, you become magnetic. Others feel your clarity and conviction. They're more likely to support you, collaborate with you, or trust you. This is not manipulation, it's resonance. People want to be part of something meaningful. Your purpose gives them a reason to invest their time and energy. In this way, purpose multiplies your impact far beyond what you could achieve alone. At the same time, purpose demands humility. Because it's bigger than you, it keeps you from becoming self-absorbed. It reminds you that your work is not only about your ego, your recognition, or your comfort. This humility protects you from some of the traps that derail talented people: arrogance, complacency, or cynicism. You're less likely to burn out when your focus is on service rather than status. You're less likely to compromise your values when your work is tied to something sacred to you. How do you nurture your sense of purpose day to day? By connecting your daily actions to your deeper why. Remind yourself regularly of the bigger picture. Write it down. Visualize it. Share it with trusted friends. When you face a tough choice, ask, does this serve my purpose? Over time, these small acts create alignment between your intentions and your habits. This alignment feels like integrity, like your life finally fits you. Purpose also influences your emotional state. People with a strong sense of why report higher levels of well-being, even under stress. They recover faster from setbacks. They're less likely to give up in the face of obstacles. This isn't mystical, it's psychological. A meaningful framework turns chaos into order. It provides a story in which pain has a place. That sense of coherence is profoundly stabilizing. In the end, purpose is not about becoming famous or impressive. It's about living a life you can respect when you're alone with your thoughts. It's about using your gifts in service of something you believe in. This doesn't have to be grand. It could be raising a family with love, teaching a class with passion, designing a product that helps people, or creating art that moves hearts. What matters is that it's authentic to you. When you align your work with your true values, you step into a current of energy that feels almost inexhaustible. Combine purpose with the other laws we've explored, and you start to see the pattern. Focus helps you aim. Practice sharpens your skill. Resilience keeps you steady. Vision points you to the horizon. Discipline powers your progress. Environment shapes your path. And purpose gives you the reason to keep walking. This is the hidden architecture of extraordinary lives. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's a set of choices, repeated over time, guided by a clear why. If you've been searching for your own genius, stop asking, what's my big breakthrough? And start asking, what matters enough to give my best to? Genius is less about IQ than about devotion. Find something worth devoting yourself to, and the energy, courage, and creativity you need will begin to emerge. This is the quiet law of success that many overlook. Purpose first, brilliance later. Purpose is the soil. Genius is the flower. Conclusion. At the end of this journey, you've seen how talent, while alluring, is rarely enough. What separates those who become geniuses from those who remain ordinary is not some secret gene or a lucky break, but a consistent pattern of thought, behavior, and courage. Each chapter has revealed one layer of this pattern: the mindset of curiosity, the discipline of deliberate practice, the courage to fail, the power of environment, the leverage of networks, and the art of shaping one's own narrative. What emerges is a picture of genius as something built, not bestowed. It is a construction project of self-awareness, habits, choices, and relentless refinement. Some people stumble upon these principles naturally, but anyone can adopt them intentionally. The laws of success are not mystical, they are actionable. They ask you to challenge your assumptions, to step beyond comfort, to invest in deep work, and to surround yourself with people and ideas that stretch you. This means that mediocrity is not a destiny but a default. Ordinary outcomes happen when people follow the path of least resistance. Extraordinary outcomes happen when people consciously design their path. Geniuses are not only thinkers or inventors, they can be teachers, entrepreneurs, artists, leaders, parents, anyone who applies these laws to create something meaningful. If you take only one message from this book, let it be this: your potential is much larger than your present. Genius begins as a decision to pursue excellence, to refuse to settle for average thinking, to keep refining your craft and expanding your mind. It is a practice you can start today. So as you close these pages, ask yourself, where in your life are you playing small, and what would happen if you applied even one of these laws of success with full commitment? The answer to that question may be the start of your own genius story.